Not know, but he writes his music, so that is all from him, and we appreciate him so much.
He writes it, but it's from God.
He writes it, but God gives it to him.
That's right.
He just writes it down. Always a pleasure, George. Thank you very much. Nehemiah. Sometimes you don't hear a whole lot about Nehemiah. Nehemiah was beginning to realize that the exiles were returning back to Jerusalem. Jerusalem was in a mess. Much of it had been torn down. The walls had been broken into pieces. The gates had been burned. And Nehemiah was having a yearning from his heart to go to Jerusalem and to rebuild those gates. And so he went to the king and he asked the king for permission to go. And he knew there would be problems. He knew there would be opposition. There would be those that would try to stand in his way. Those that would try to keep him from building the gates or repairing the gates to Jerusalem. But he went. And he went secretly at night at first and began to look over the area and see what needed to be done. He began to find those that he could count upon and those that would go with him and help to do the work. And then he began to gather the people and got them in place and had them to stand. Out of Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 13. Listen to the words of the Lord. Nehemiah speaking to the people. Therefore I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, placing them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. This is God's word for God's people today.
Thanks be to God.
Nehemiah knew there was going to be opposition. And the people were armed. They were ready for battle. They were standing for something and doing things that they all felt that God wanted done. And so the people stood in place, carrying their arms and working. Some of them, if you read this story of Nehemiah, there were some standing guard while others worked. There were some who had weapons in one hand and toiling with the other hand. The walls were built. The walls were maintained and carried out. You see, sometimes when there is right, sometimes it takes a battle. That's where we're at today. Today we've had men and women standing at the walls, standing there at our protection, doing the work, doing the things that needs to be done, but yet are ready for battle, ready for war. For as long as you can remember, the United States has had men and women in uniforms and protecting our shores, protecting our land. Sometimes they go and these men and women, they help people in other lands try to restore their place, try to restore order to their place, to bring about peace and happiness in that land. You see, it takes all kinds to go and to be ready to stand in the gap. We've had our men and our women, our veterans today, and today we begin to remember those that have stood in battle. Those that have stood at the walls and protecting us, remembering that we're doing it for our sons, our daughters, our wives, our husbands, and our homes. That's why we have people all over the world that stand together in uniform. We're doing it for our home, protecting our place, so that these little kids can grow up and remember one day what this land of freedom cost. It's not cheap, is it? It hasn't been cheap. There have been many, many lives that have been lost with people standing at the point of harm and harm's way. I know in when we went to Washington, D.C. with our kids many, many years ago, probably 25 years ago, something along that line.
20.
We took our kids there, and I was so impressed. I had been there one time when I was in the military to Washington, D.C., but then I went back with our family. And I was so impressed when I saw the monument with the Marines lifting that flag, when I saw semblances of the Korean War, when I went to that wall, the Vietnam Wall, and stood at that black-looking granite and looking at all of those names of young boys and young men and women that had died. 58,000, 56,000 that had died, that had given their lives, trying to make people free, trying to keep people, trying to make our land free. And it's costly. And we need to remember these people. I know I see programs where sometimes these guys come back from Afghanistan, and you've got a whole group of people there, celebration, waving flags, and glad they're home. And you didn't see that in the Vietnam War. You didn't see that. That was a bad thing. But people have stood in the gap for you and me for years, so that we can have a land that we can go to and be proud of, so that we can have a place that we can live in freedom and enjoy life without being a dictator. You know, sometimes it's the same thing in the church. We have our veterans. We have our veterans in the churches that stand and battle and ready to continue on with the things that had taken place back here when John was a boy. When his grandpa and all of these families were gathered around. There were people that were ready to stand, and even in danger, and build the church. See this community prosper. There are people like that today in the church who simply want the best for this place. It's in every church, every community. There's veterans of all kinds. You may not put on a uniform, but you may be a soldier for Jesus Christ. Amen. That's what it's about. Today we're going to honor our veterans, our veteran church people, but most of all we're going to honor our veteran soldiers. I was given this little plaque the other day. I'm not sure how long you've had this. Do you remember?
8, 10 years.
Okay, 8 or 10 years. You remember where it came from, or did you just happen to come across it?
No, our pastor gave it to me.
Oh, your pastor gave it to you. Okay. This says, "Thank you for everything. They were called to serve. They never asked why. They fought for freedom for you and I. Their families and friends were left behind. Their goal was peace for all mankind. Fighting for liberty and justice for all. Some lived to see it, but some did fall. Each one risked their life so freedom could ring. Thank you all for everything." Do you ever think about thanking the veteran? You ever think about thanking the guy that had carried the flag or been on the mission that's given us this place that we can call freedom, that we can call the USA? There have been many that have given everything that they've had, given their lives. There's been some of these boys that have not come home. There's been some of these mothers that have looked for their sons and they never came home. It's about thanking them. Today, I want us to take a moment, and if we can do something a little bit different. I would like, if you've been a veteran, you're a veteran of the armed services, I'd like for you to come up here with me and just stand for a moment. Nobody wants to be first, but somebody's got to be the first one up. If you've been a veteran, served in the service, I'd like for you to come up here.
Go down.
Do you know how to run it? No. You got it. While they're coming up, I'd like to say that Warren Froshiser is commander of the veterans group at Hollywood Ranch, and we're awfully proud of him.
We're
and the
awfully
work
proud
that
of
he's
him.
done.
I'm going to rearrange these guys just a moment. Come right over here. No, we're not doing it by height or anything like that. First of all, I've got Bob back here in the back. And I've got him back there for a reason. You'll see here in a moment. But Bob, what I want you guys to do is just to tell everybody maybe what year you were in, where you served, what branch of the service you were in, just anything along those lines, okay? Bob, would you go first?
1960, 1964, U.S. Air Force, Dover, Delaware.
All right.
65 to 69, Navy. I was on the same ship for 3.5 years. They just couldn't get rid of me. Made 3 tours over to Vietnam off the coast.
1968 to 1971, United States Army. Spent 18 months pretty much here in Texas and 18 months in Vietnam.
U.S. Army, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, 61 to 66.
Where did you serve?
Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Okay. 1966 to 68, I was in Cam Bay, South Vietnam, and got out in 68, came home with my lovely wife.
68, 69, I was in Huachuca, Arizona, and then in Germany.
57, 58, field artillery, Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
That's why you say it so loud, right?
Can't hear it either.
Right.
David Stanton, Lieutenant, United States Navy, Naval Aviator in Brunswick, Maine. 7 years, 63 to 70.
Army, 89, 91.
Marine Corps, 42, 45, South Pacific.
Mr. Carl, right now, is, I believe, if I'm correct, our last surviving soldier of World War II in this church. And so, Mr. Carl, we appreciate him very much. And would you tell us your age? 89?
89.
89, okay, 89. I knew he was getting up there, but I wasn't sure. But these are the kind of guys that you see on the streets, and a lot of times you don't even realize where they've been or what they've done. And I just want you to take time sometimes and just think of that. And I'd like now, if you would, to stand with us as we begin to get ready to close. That is in memory of all those that have not been able to come back home to families. This morning, take an opportunity and just think of that. Would you dismiss us?
I'll try. I stand this morning, Father, in celebration of those who stand before us, who gave a sacrifice to leave their families so that we could stay safe at home. I thank you for those who surround us in this church, who stand strong so that we can come each Sunday and celebrate Jesus. And I thank you for the grace that they've given us, that is poured on us by their sacrifice. And I stand strong this morning proclaiming before all that my pride rests in the fact that I am a Christian American. That I serve in this church, and I serve in this community, and I serve in this nation. And I thank you for the pride that is instilled in me, that those who have served in the past, those who are serving now, and those that are serving in the future, I call today for a legion of angels to surround them, that they be protected from those forces around them, so that we can be protected by the forces around us. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless His holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Pass the wives.
Who's your heart? I don't have any makeup left.
Right behind me. Probably in the...
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
We'll have a trustees meeting just shortly.
Oh, I guess we have no...
You're dismissed.